call the meeting to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, I think everybody's here with the exception of Clark, so we have a quorum. Okay, number 4, approve the minutes from our July 20th meeting. Has everybody had a chance to read over those and get any corrections to Jim? Okay, do we have a motion to approve them? Okay. Jim seconds. Okay. Any further discussion or comments on the minutes of July 20th? All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Jim, another incredibly thorough job.
Thanks everyone for reviewing and keeping this correct.
That's right. Okay, I want to mention this is a microphone up here for us. Leanne tells me it'll probably catch us, most of us, if we look at it and talk fairly loud, with the exception of maybe the last 3 folks back there. And there's one for Steve and Jim and Randy to pass around. So, okay. So Rules Committee appeal.
You skipped over the financial.
Oh, well, I did, didn't I? Financial update. So Clark's not here, so Charlie tells me he's gonna do the numbers for us.
Okay, can you put it on slideshow, please? All right, can you hear me? This is the first month of our fiscal 6 months. So remember, we approved an 18-month budget, so it's going to be, the first is going to be from July through December, and then we're going to get on an annual budget. So good news is, started out strong. You see on the revenue line, strongly out of the gate, favorable to budget, 26,000. On the expense, we were favorable to budget about 31,000. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. So bottom line, starting out of the gate, about 57,000 positive. Don't think that'll stick. That's not our intention for that to stick. That's our intention to, get close to 0, and I'll explain that here in a second. Building permits blown away last month, so almost $10,000 over budget. When a house, the original permits are issued for a year. When it rolls over a year, there's a renewal, and that's done on a pro rata. And so there's some pretty big projects. And then also, as we were just talking about, the amount of construction activity that's going on right now is just crazy. I hear the meeting today was a little bit slower. There's no new houses. So you'll see some ebbs and flows on that. Okay, but it was a good month last month. Greenspeak, really strong there. Okay, lots of guests playing golf. It was the month of July, so it was positive there. Of course, it was dry for most of the month of July, so there really wasn't any course closing days and the whole bit. Newsletter ads, they continue to be very strong. Early release on this next month looks strong again. I saw Pete today, and he said it was strong. And miscellaneous income, resale certificates was very positive, as was the citation line. Expense highlights, Public Works, some positive variances there. If you look down at Parks and Lakes, there's a negative variance. So really, if you add those two together, we have 2 different cost centers that the people that mow and weed eat, do all that, come out of. The Parks and Lakes is really a seasonal position in the Public Works. We had several guys in the seasonal position. Now one of them's moved to a full-time position because we had an opening there. So, but we had we actually had some openings between both of those for the month of July. We had some guys hired, and they took other jobs. Golf course, once again, a temporary deal. Salaries and the benefits were positive. And the water bill was low, but that's gonna change on us. You saw that last year, we ended up high, and they're gonna have to start pumping into the lake. Same thing on securities, there's positive salary benefits, and then central garage, one of our key men was out for several months. He had broken his back in a car wreck, and he is actually back to workforce now, so that'll snap back in. Lodge food service, positive on salary benefits, food supply and liquor. Sanitation, the disposal fees were a little bit lower. And in Lake and Parks, you can see where that was. Lodge management, where there was some tree trimming there that was related to some of the trees over the pavilion. They turned out looking real nice. We charged that against lodge management. In the golf professionals, some of that's a timing issue on the golf marshal. Yeah.
So I see also on the revenue side, we're almost exactly budget on the lodge, so that was good.
Pretty darn close.
That's very good.
And that was an uncertain budget. So I hate knock on any piece of wood that we have in there. We're positive so far this month to the budget. We're down compared to last year, which is happening in most restaurants. Now there's some pizza deliveries that are different, but most dine-in restaurants are down, and we're actually down, but we're positive to budget because we backed off on the budget. Yeah, so good. The balances here, you can see that we spent some money on the ARF related there, and there was a pickup truck and some other things that were done. Delinquencies, we actually went up. So we had a downtrend for about 3 months right there. And it was a pretty positive downtrend, but it actually ticked up this month. I don't think there's any really long-term, systemic issues, because once again, we have the deed. If someone's behind, we actually have the ability to foreclose on them. We are waiting on one of our major delinquencies to be able to do that. They're not doing that quite yet with foreclosures on the courthouse steps. Indian Creek, 158 people that are contributing $10 a month. Is there an update on that, Barbara? Is that number pretty close?
Not the treasury.
Okay.
So I don't know.
But usually you were good about giving
I
us
know,
the
but I'm not
updates.
the treasurer.
But I think that number keeps steadily ticking up.
I know she's had a couple over the last month.
Yeah, so that's good there. Here's the balance in the overall accounts. You can see the checking, which is our operating statement there, the reserve funds, contingency, security deposits, and total balance almost $2.7 million. We did hit at $3 million there for a while, but of course, as we've been, the pavilion goes towards completion, we're spending that money down, and it's actually just as we had forecasted it would be. So I think overall, a very solid month out of the blocks. I think some of that surplus, will be spent back down as we go through it. As an example, I saw Matt's tree service working today, taking down, some trees, and so we'll spin through that. So, any questions on that? Thank you.
All right, well, we'll hope the revenue.
We hope the revenue well.
I understand spending timing, but let's hope revenue. So, very good. Thank you, Charlie. Okay, did we hear anything from Michelle about deferring this Rules Committee appeal?
Have not.
So on the Rules Committee appeal, we kind of went back and forth with Ms. Taylor on that about whether to do it in a regular session, in an executive session, this month, next month, by Zoom. So we're proposing to her that we do it in the executive session next month, but we haven't confirmed.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we table that until September meeting.
Okay, for the executive session.
Yeah, or an executive session for September.
Okay,
On this bill.
all right, we have a second on that. Okay, a second from Kathy. Any other comments on that? Okay, all in favor of tabling that till the September meeting, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so that motion passes, so we tabled that. We have a few guests here, and we had a few questions submitted. in writing. This is gonna be a long meeting. I wondered about doing, member guest or member comments and questions now. Would anybody be opposed to moving that up to now? Okay, so let me see, find the answers to the ones that were sent in. Okay, and I'm going to face the microphone here. So Julian Jager, lot 9, asked, when will the trail on the nature trail get upgraded? The chopped up asphalt pieces and chunks are poor looking and large chunks are trip hazards. Go back to the crushed granite once the asphalt pieces and chunks are removed and the trail graded properly for walking and drainage. I believe we also had this same question roughly like last month. So, Jim Fox, do you want to do your response, or would you rather me just read it?
I'll be glad to read it too.
Okay, grab that microphone if you would.
PowerPoint from that I sent earlier in the day. I didn't know we were going to cover that in Parks and Rec.
Okay, I put it on. Why don't you just give a broad response?
Yeah, and then mention that we'll talk about it during Parks and Rec as well.
Parks and Recreation Committee did review soft surface trails after the question came 2-3 meetings ago, I guess it was. We did look at the soft surface trail issue. And there were some cost estimates that we, just very preliminary kind of cost estimating and what it would take to put decomposed granite down on both the south trail below the dam and also the horseshoe trail up in the horseshoe there, the north trail. So basically the response then, the committee recommended that those cost estimates to improve the trail surface by installing decomposed granite on the walking path below the dam in the horseshoe be forwarded to the long range planning committee. So then the long range planning committee could prioritize those as they look at the next budget cycle. The cost estimates are intended to help respond to user requests. That was our intent. So we're getting another request right now. And what the committee kind of considered that really a lower priority, mostly due to the high cost of the improvements of the trails. The south trail in our preliminary estimates is about $30,000. One of the unknowns too there that we really couldn't estimate very well was if we had to go in and remove the existing asphalt millings with the larger chunks. I don't think we would want to put decomposed granite on top of that and then have those chunks come up through there. It's become a waste of the money. So there was no real cost estimated for removal. So it was probably going to be in excess of $30,000. That was for materials and labor to put decomposed granite in. The horseshoe trail, which I know is probably not the one that's in question right now, but that one would be about $65,000. That's a 2/3 of a mile trail that is below the dam is about a 1/4 mile. The one in the horseshoe has got lots of issues with drainage. I know I've heard since, could you put a boardwalk in? So there's all kinds of hidden costs up there in that trail. But just to put the granite down and buy the materials for that would be about $65,000. So each of those trails could be, prioritized separately. The trail, the existing trails are rough. I've walked them both, but they're functional. And I guess it depends on your perspective on what kind of trail you're looking for. Certainly a decomposed granite would provide an accessible, smoother trail, which would be less money than concrete or asphalt also, but would be a good surface. So the project, if we want to, reevaluate that as a higher priority, then we need to do additional planning. We have to get quotes for that from a contractor to find out it's not in the next budget cycle to do any of this, so I mean, we do have this, that would be my thought, was if we could have the 2021 survey and target usage of those, so we know really what kind of usage we're having on those trails. I think that's the big question mark with Parks and Recreation Committee had, was there's perceptions that it's not used as much. I see people on it, but I don't really know how many people are using it. So I think that's the big question is we need to do a survey question that really kind of targets that, and then just reevaluate it. And you got coming 18 months now, and see where we want to go with it, because it is expensive to do that in view of all the other expenses that we're facing.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I guess for Charlie, I know you've had people over there picking up chunks occasionally. Are you still doing that?
As resources allow. Yeah.
Okay.
As we get guys
Good.
available.
Okay, as resources allow, that's still being done. Okay, we had another question. In Miller, lot 265, asked, we heard there was a possibility the east gate would be upgraded or replaced. Is this still in the works? And if so, is there a time frame for it? So Jim Adams is our chairman of the Architectural Control Committee, so I'm going to let him respond to that.
Actually, it's more relative to long-range planning, I should
Oh
point
yeah,
out. So,
long-range planning.
but that's
Sorry,
okay, I'm in both of those things.
that's what I meant.
So the guardhouse and the east gate are the highest priorities on, outside of the park bridges, which are being done today, this one, the second pass at those. So those were our highest priorities. The funding for those made it into this budget. And so now the Security and Safety Committee is receiving plans for both the guardhouse and the east gate, and they're in the evaluation, or they will start the evaluation process. And our plans are to get something started by the end of our fiscal period, or by the end of 2021, and have something started. Hopefully sooner, but that's all depends on the plans and what happens.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Okay, we had two questions similar here about Charlie. So Mary Cobb, lot 713, Karen Ritter, lot 1739. Rumor has it that Charlie has resigned. When is the effective date of the resignation? What process will be used to find a replacement? When will the replacement process begin? We as a community need to be prepared. Pretty much the identical ones on the second one. So yes, Charlie and Adele have sold their house and are living at a friend's place here in Lake Kiowa. They began discussing retirement plans and gave me a heads up at that time. So I've known for, I guess, a couple of months now. Charlie has since honed in on a retirement date of October 9th. So that's new to our board, several of them, October 9th. So a community manager search committee is being selected, and we'll begin working diligently to update the job description and get it posted in appropriate places. Once applications begin to be received, they will be reviewed by the search committee, and the most applicable candidates will be interviewed, and then we'll narrow that down to hopefully one candidate. So that's the process. So big job, lot of stuff to fill. So it's going to be hard to replace Charlie. So we will hopefully not be in dire straits, but you'll be missed.
Congratulations on retirement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a few members in the audience. Anybody have a question or comment from the audience? Yes, sir. Name and lot number.
John Ward, lot number 820. I've also heard a rumor, well, I heard a rumor, Charlie also, about selling part of fairway number 4 over there to a landowner.
Yes, sir.
Could you just explain what's going on there, and is it already a done deal, or? And if so, why didn't we put it before the?
Why didn't we put that before the, community to, vote on that? If we're gonna set part of the golf course, everybody should be involved in that.
Okay. All right, so the question is about a tract of land sold to well, is at the request of a member, and it was as part of the sale of a piece of property. The prospective owner had some plans, and they wanted to see if that was possible. So several tracts of land have been sold over, I don't know, how many years, Charlie, do you think we've been selling little tracts of land?
At least 5 years.
So at least 5 years, probably more than that. And so we followed the same procedure that the board has used each of those times. And so it usually comes from a member, usually to Charlie, sometimes maybe to to Rich or something like that. They take a look at it. They come up with a proposed price. They bring it to the board. The board determines if it's a reasonable transaction. And then we vote on it. And so that's the procedure we used. So we did consult Les on this question. Les Sweet is our attorney. So he says, a potential property owner is requesting to purchase a small portion of golf course property to add to his or her residence building site to enlarge the site to accommodate the plan approved by the ACC. This has been approved by the Lake County Board of Directors. Since neither plot of land is significantly changed, this transaction would not be a rezone. It is, if it had a name, the closest description would be dividing of lots. The board of directors complies with covenant 2.04 in this regard. Since the board of directors is not specifically prohibited from dividing POA property as planned, the board can exercise the requested discretion if, in the board's opinion, it is in the best interest of the POA as a whole. So that was Les's opinion. And in fact, 2 other tracts of actual golf course land have been sold in recent years that I can think of. And then several of the tracts were access points for the golf course, which were not used. So one interesting
So,
thing.
excuse me, are you saying that tracks of the golf course have been sold before?
Yes, sir. At least 2.
Actual golf course?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Bill, they are, purpose is so that the guys can get guidance for setbacks. Like an example on number 11, the pool was made, you know, I'm talking about where Chris Collier lives.
Yeah.
So he can put a pool in. He couldn't get it for setbacks, so he had to buy a small section so he would be with guidance. That's the purpose of selling. So if if you want to do something with your land and you had a piece sitting there that's not being used and you're willing to pay, $15,000, $20,000 to, hey, I want to move it, that's the purpose, in my opinion, in my reasoning. That's something.
I'm not finished. So one other thing of note on here is that it's actually the widest spot on the entire golf course, with the exception of where 2 holes parallel each other. I think that's number 3 and number 10 parallel each other. So it's the widest spot of a single hole on the golf course, and it's widest by about 100 feet. So I think we're losing about 25 feet of that. So it's still going to be the widest spot on the golf course by about 75. Now that's measured by Google Earth, best I can tell.
Well, I was playing Saturday and hit a ball over that area. Got up there and I was in bounds, where it is right now, by 2 feet. The way those stakes are, I'll be out of bounds by 4 or 5 feet on that same shot.
I'm out of bounds all the time. Of course, it's,
We can keep selling off golf course and you'd really be in trouble. I mean, I just don't think we should sell a golf course unless the people out here vote on it.
yeah, well, I appreciate your input. Randy?
Randy Howell, lot 1014. Just my thoughts, Rick, on that particular, what y'all were talking about. I have been here to see quite a few golf course properties sold in the past, just like what Randy Romine just conveyed. But every one that I know of in the past that has been sold has been a golf course access property, not playable surface. Whether that's right or wrong, that, all the ones I've been involved with personally and seen while I was on the board were golf course access properties, not golf course playable part of the golf course in the past. Okay?
I appreciate
So
that.
I would keep that in mind. I think that's where a lot of the community's concerns are, whether it's legal to sell it or not legal, or has to be voted on. You know, I'm not here to say that.
Right,
I'm
right.
just here to state past sales that I'm aware of. Rich Collier's was not in his backyard, it was beside the fence. And again, that's an access problem to the golf course.
There was another sliver taken out of the golf course in order to meet the setbacks.
Where was that at?
Number 11.
Number?
Yes, he started out with the access thing and realized he needed a little more. After
Rich
that.
Collier did
Yeah,
that,
it went out.
fell back to?
Went like this.
Yep. So, I appreciate that, Randy, and I think we probably do need to consider things like that in the future. Maybe
Yeah.
come up with a good procedure.
Yeah, and one thing that sticks in my mind on that, what you're talking about, Rick, is not to make it set a precedent, because I know that my adjoining neighbor where I live on number 10, and Jack Feast and the other houses, 3 houses that are on that road, the place that were built, is very, the lots are so shallow there, they don't have any room at all in the backyard. And so that's area that they can say, hey, we want some more area. This area don't never get into very often either.
Right,
Open
right.
can of worms there.
Yeah, so
Those are very limited backyard.
yeah, so I do have a plan for us as we go into executive session in a little bit to discuss a new procedure on considering any sale of POA property.
Right.
So, Jim?
I know that it's going to executive session later, and I will say, I dissent with the opinion that Les has, and I've had attorney review language. I do not believe what Les is saying stands up to legal language. And I will be sharing that with the board when we go into executive session. But I agree with what you guys are saying. It concerns me that we're not following the covenants.
Our lawyer says we are, so that's who we have to go with right now, I think. Okay, anything else? Questions from the audience? Okay, thank you. Okay, that takes us to a COVID-19 committee, discuss and take possible action on any community action. So Kathy, can you update us on
Yes,
what's
sir.
going on?
Yes, currently, Cook County has 25 active cases.
Speak up a little bit. Or do you want to use the mic?
Yeah.
Take it easy.
Currently, Cook County has 25 active cases. Total cases that have been confirmed was 263. We've had 5 fatalities. I spoke with Ray Fletcher this morning, and Kiowa currently has 2 active cases, and the rest of those cases are spread out between Gainesville, Lindsay, and Munster. The state of Texas has 530,857 confirmed, 9,771 deaths. Dallas, everybody I'm sure saw the news where it's spiked because of some found tests that have been there for a while with the private clinics. So the numbers are really going up, but they definitely confirmed they were older cases. I did see where the governor has passed another proclamation to give more time for early voting. So it will be October 13th through October 30th. And that way they'll have more time. So I thought that was probably a good idea. And we have for sure gotten confirmation back from Judge Brinkley that the Kiwanis activity is approved for their fundraiser. Anglers is approved. The autumn accent for KWC is approved for late October. And the Women's Club meeting, that the first one will be September. If he approves it, that letter just went out today. So we should know this week. And I haven't heard of other fundraisers or activities that need to go to Judge Brinkley yet. Any questions or? I know we still have the playground, to discuss.
Yes.
Do we want to do that now or?
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Barbara Fox, 1452. So the anglers, with all their auctions and silent auctions, signing in, that all got approved.
I didn't see what they sent to Judge Brinkley, but I saw the response from Judge Brinkley that he thought they had a good plan.
Because we're looking into ours, so we want to see what happens.
Right, I think all the clubs can learn from each other.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to share those plans with the bigger clubs so we, can help them out. But, Kelly, I don't know if you saw the,
I did.
I'll try to find out, Barbara.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So the playground?
Playground. Do we want to, I assume it still is closed?
The playgrounds are still currently closed.
Correct.
We've had one member make multiple requests to open up the playgrounds. The playgrounds are still closed. We've had one request, or we've had multiple requests from the same individual to open up the playgrounds. Jim Fox actually did some research and found out that the city of Plano has opened up playgrounds, and they basically just said, users beware to a certain extent. I think they're probably doing some sanitation, but not nonstop sanitation. So I think we talked about, or the idea would be to put the swings back up and open the playgrounds back up and just give the parents a warning of making sure they wash the kids' hands before and after and the whole bit.
New signs? Is that what that means?
Yeah, we'd do new signs, and it would be part of the weekly update and sending it out and the whole bit.
And we would clean once a week or anything, or any idea?
We could probably do it once a day. I mean, just a quick wipe down, but you're not going to be able to clean the wood surfaces. I mean, you're basically what you do is just do wipes on the swing chains and maybe the gate handles and things like that. So
105 degrees ain't living very long.
Jim Fox?
At the last Parks and Recreation Committee meeting, we also talked about that. There wasn't any clear consensus amongst our group either whether to keep it open or closed. I think at that time, everybody was there was some discussion saying school is going to be opening, because this meeting was before school had opened, and maybe want to hang out at least till after school opens and see what happens, because kids will be occupied obviously during the day, and let's have an abundance of caution in keeping it closed. But that was but again, there was a lot of discussion about parents need to use their own judgment taking kids, and several people stated, I don't think I would take my grandkids there. So again, it's sort of an individual decision on that. So it was discussed at the Parks and Recreation Committee.
Okay, so does anybody feel strongly enough, one way or the other, to make a motion about the playground? Hearing none, I guess we leave it as is. Still closed.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, Kevin?
That's it.
Any other questions or, I know we've got a deal on the golf carts on your ready session.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, lot rezoning election. So on page 28, you should find proposed ballot language on this. So this is one we've been talking about for some time. Lots 1879, 1880 at the front gate, the log cabin looking house. The current owners would like to put it up for, or ask the question about rezoning in a special election that would be done just for it, be the only thing on the ballot. And this is the proposed language on page 28. They've also got some drawings back there to answer our questions about parking, ingress, and egress. The one on the right shows 8 parking spaces and how you would access them. And then they're proposing ingress from the northernmost entrance, egress from the southernmost, because they are going to have to cut through that little cut through before you get to the guardhouse. So it gives them more time to work their way over here. So any questions on this proposed language, ballot language?
You know the property owners here. this
Right,
evening.
yes, our property owner, one of the two is back there, so. Any questions? Sam?
Yeah, on the part as far as the POA statement from board members, is that actually going to be on the ballot itself too? Is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to see after, on that first sentence, after commercial, the adding of business, in other words, indicate they like commercial business. Just that one word.
All right,
And, the last sentence there, comply with the guidelines in our architectural control. I know would be a little bit more specific, the Lake Kiowa Property Owner Association Architectural Control Handbook. Brother Howard.
yep, good suggestion.
That's all I have.
Okay. Any other proposed changes to the language?
So, what my question?
Jim?
The 8 parking spaces, how is that arrived at?
It actually says 4 to 8.
4 to 8?
Should be a minimum of 4 to 8. As far as the drawing there, I believe they're the required kind of minimum for standard commercial parking spaces of 90 feet wide and 18 feet long. And so the realtor's husband is a landscape architect. He can the drawing. 4 to 8, if it's just one owner who has very limited traffic, they may not want to build 8. They might want to do 4.
So will all this language be listed? I'm asking the same question Sam is, but I'm going to be very specific how it gets put on the ballot.
Right, and I'm suggesting that we also include the drawing like that one, the one on the right in the ballot.
Okay, if it's all listed before you get to answer yes or no, I'm fine. But if you have to turn to another page or something before you say yes or no, I'm not fine.
I assume we can do that, right?
I hope so.
Yeah. So we really should put the yes or no at the bottom, right? After you read all this, and then vote yes or no. Is the way it should work, right?
Rick, when are we planning to put this on the ballot? Is this gonna be,
Do you remember?
What was your, Ms. Robles, what was your latest recommendation? Was it mid-September to mid-October?
Yeah, late September and 30 days.
that's what I figured.
Right, so we would leave it open for 30 days and we would send out notices to those who haven't voted once a week. Is that the way that works?
Yes.
Can I ask her a question? Yeah, go ahead.
You,
Can I ask her a question?
sure.
Do you plan to do any, town hall meeting or, public explanation?
Yes.
I think if you don't, you're gonna be very challenged.
No, we plan on doing that, and, if you would, by addressing.
Yes, go ahead, please.
What, sanitize the microphone.
I think I'm socially more than 6 feet away, so.
Yeah, here's the parking across here, and this is the circle drive. You would enter, this would be the ingress, this would be the egress, to then come around, and if they needed to exit the Lake Highland. However, most of the interest in the property has been actually from some people who live out here, and more services sort of geared to the community residents. And so there could be people drive up there on their golf carts. So, there's not going to be, I don't think traffic is going to be a huge issue, because otherwise the interest that there has been business that could be taken care of by phone, computer, or by appointment. So, there wouldn't be, we're not talking about a, Family Dollar store or anything. Here's the property. It is surrounded by either POA owned property or commercial property. This is POA, which in the original plat maps of this development was designated as recreation. This lot is owned by the POA. This little point touches the back end of the maintenance area. And this borders the commercial property on 902. So it's not actually, residential is not the highest and best use of the property anymore, and which is one of the reasons we're asking for this. Also, in the for the ballot, on your papers there where it has the Exhibit A POA statement for the board members. This was just sort of to give an idea of the sorts of things that would not be allowed. That is not intended to be on the ballot because I think that it's not 700 plus people are voting, or hopefully will vote to approve the rezoning. That's what the election is about. it's not, the vote, this would be explained, all of this would be explained in our town hall meetings. And any other, printed matter that we might send out to the property owners. But,
So that's your intention that it's not on there, right?
pardon me?
That's your intention that this language not be on there?
Yes.
Okay. I'm thinking we're not gonna approve it then if it's not on there.
Well,
So you-
700 people, and I think you can appreciate this, to decide what or what you can or cannot do with your property, if it were your piece of property. And I think we have listed everything on here that would, be offensive, obnoxious, illegal, that would not be allowed there. And if you talk about deed restrictions, which we have, that has come up in conversation, any specific deed restrictions, would need to be discussed with the estate's attorney first. So these kinds of things should not be on the ballot, but explained to the property owners and to all of you. That these are the intentions.
Well, from my perspective, we want to communicate to our members that we're not allowing these type of things. And we kind of wanted to be specific.
Mhm.
And secondly, I think you're gonna have a lot better chance of passing it if they're listed. So that's my perspective. But we can take a vote, if we just go with the top part.
Mhm.
If the board approves of that, if they're okay with that, or we can take a vote of the whole thing. So, but the board has to approve what goes on the ballot. It's not the owner's choice, I guess you'd say.
Right.
If you don't like what we approve, you can not hold the election. So, Jim Fox?
Do we have a contractual agreement prior to the election that they have agreed to put that in there?
Yeah.
Because
We've been able to talk to Les
election
about that.
passes and we have no agreement that those would be put in there and they're not on the ballot. Not that they're going to be dishonest, but I'm just saying, we
Yeah.
have no way of
Yeah, that's a good.
forcing it after the election.
Right. That's a good question. So I think we should make sure that happens. That's an agreement before it goes to the election.
Okay.
So Jim,
So something the attorneys would.
I think we have a vote on it first.
I think what Jim's saying makes sense, and it needs to live longer than just that election. And it has to live longer than the owner who takes ownership of the property from this roadway. It has to be
that's right.
something in our
The
rules, our
deed
covenants,
restrictions,
instruct-
go with the property.
Yes, we have to put some kind of deed, and if she needs her attorney to negotiate with our attorney, let's get after it.
Yeah,
They wouldn't have sold the property prior to the election, so deed restrictions would not be run with the land until the property is sold. So we would want that agreement, a legal agreement saying you're going to put that in your sale.
yep, I think that's right. So, something else?
I understand what you're saying. And obviously, I want you to approve the ballot, but I do need to speak to the attorney. And, if we, let's see, when would be your next meeting? If you don't vote on it tonight.
Yeah, so it's September 21st.
And then we could make it, we could decide and, whatever it is and do it right into that,
Yes.
Okay, if you
the
want-
ballot.
Yes, so if you want to find out how,
Mhm.
And our attorney's been in the hospital a couple of times, and so we apologize for that.
No, that's fine, I understand, but you understand my needing to check this out too, with our attorney. So, yeah, I'd like to do that. If, you'd like to put off the vote until, the next meeting.
But what we could do now is just kind of an indicative vote, so you can see that if the board's gonna insist on all this Exhibit A language or not. You want us to do that right now? Okay,
If
so
you'd like.
just indicative vote, not who all would require the Exhibit A statement on there now, so, okay, I think that's everybody. So,
So you
That's
want
what
all of
you're
the land uses that would not be allowed?
yes,
And you need to enter, your attorney needs to work with our attorney to enter into some kind of agreement that they'll have some kind of restrictions like that.
Okay, is your attorney going to be available?
yeah, we'll find one that if Lex
Okay.
isn't able to, for sure.
Okay,
Now, we could go on and pass language for the ballot tonight and make our vote contingent upon an actual legal agreement between our attorney and your attorney, and that might speed things up.
that's a good idea.
And then that would have to be reached before we actually put it on the ballot. Sam, you didn't like that idea?
I'm not much in favor of that.
Okay. Not in favor of that?
No.
Okay.
I am. I'm in favor of it. Let the attorneys take care of their business and us vote on it.
What's your rationale, Sam?
I'd like the two attorneys to get together and come up with some, formation of the language that they're going to use that we can see before any type of vote.
Okay, an actual
Actual-
legal agreement, not ballot language, but actual legal.
Right.
Okay.
I think
Okay,
it's
I can go with that then. So, okay, so we'll defer
That's just
that.
my opinion now.
Yeah, it makes sense. So, okay, so if you're, excuse me, if you're okay with putting that out till we get that language, we'll put it in our agenda for next month.
For September
Yes,
17th, you said?
21st.
21st.
So would you let us know who your attorney is on that and email that information to Charlie?
Sure,
So,
Yeah.
and then they can,
I'll take care of that tomorrow.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, so that one's deferred till next month.
Do we need a motion to table?
Yes, you want to make that motion?
I make the motion that we table, action on the rezoning election until the September meeting.
Second from Jim. Any other discussion, comments? All in favor of the motion? Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Sam. Okay. How are we doing on time here? We'll do this next one before we go into a break. All right, so I think we all got an email. I guess it's from Dennis Ingalls requesting help with the ICVFD petition drive. So I'm just thinking, besides just signing on onto their petition, if you support it, I'm wondering if the board should take a position supporting this transition to the ESD. So I'm thinking it would be more likely to pass if the board took a position. And then beyond that, I don't know if there's other things that we can do to support that. But, wanted to get your comments on that.
Penny's here too, if you want.
Oh, okay, so, yeah, do you want to make a comment on that?
Well, we would certainly welcome support from the board, and our Vice President, Barbara Fox, is here as well. And we've pretty much laid out the case, I believe, in the communique and in a couple of addresses to the board that we simply can't sustain what we're doing very far into the future. Just last month, 58 calls. There's 440 calls last year and 58 last month. I mean, it's advancing. The funding simply is inadequate, and we have to start finding a way to fund some firefighters to relieve those. You can't have people working full-time, many with a second job, all with family responsibilities. And we have 4 of them taking 80% of these calls. So we're really here to we're the messengers that there is a need, and the emergency services district path has been a very sound resolution throughout the United States and across Texas, more than 300 now in Texas.
Okay, thank you.
Can I say something too?
Yes, Barbara.
Some of the facts is that, and I tell people when I'm asking them to sign the petition, is that the residents aren't aware of some of the logistical issues with our equipment. Our tender, which holds all the water for fires, it was out of commission for a week because they had parts that broke down. It's old. We need a $600,000, and we cannot go to a bank and ask for a $500,000 loan when our only guaranteed income is about $10,000 to $12,000 from the county. Everything else is fundraising. And obviously this year is a prime example that we're going to be losing a lot of money on fundraising. So.
Thank you. So I would like to make a motion that we as a board endorse the transition to the ESD by the volunteer fire department. So I make that motion. Jim seconds it. Okay, so any further discussion, comments, opinions?
Well, I'll just comment that I've been the liaison to the volunteer fire department. I attend their meetings, and they've been through a very thorough process to get to where they are today. They're very good stewards of the donations that they do get, and they're very conscientious of the workers, the volunteers that volunteer for them. And I mean, they're doing all they can. And as Barbara said, I mean, just one fire truck, if we lost it, they would be in trouble. And the cost of those trucks is incredible. So if we can get more funding, and it should help all of our insurances at some degree. So that will give some back pay, so to speak, on whatever that tax is. So.
Thank you. Other comments, questions before we go? Jim, what's your
699.
Yes, sir.
I know earlier, I think we had 158 people that give $10 a month.
Out of 1440 billable lots.
That's just absurd. Why can't we just say, hey, everybody pays $10, we say.
Well, that's a POA thing that the Indian Creek has nothing to do with POA. So
You would say, look, everybody gets $10 and give it to the POA, give it to the Indian Creek. But we all benefit.
but we also have 62 square miles outside. Y'all, I mean, we love Kiowa people because y'all give, a third of the people in Kiowa give, where only a quarter less give outside. So the ESD makes it where everybody gives their fair share. We don't have to go and say, we need that $25,000 check from one person. Everybody would give their fair share through this taxation area.
So there are a lot of people that do give, not, they just don't do
Yeah, I realize
a
that.
monthly thing. They give big checks one time a year, whatever it is, or through the fundraisers, things like that. Randy, you have a comment on?
Yeah, Randy Howell, 1014. On the ESD, Barbara, it's for not just Kyle, it would be everybody.
It would be
Correct.
everybody in our city.
Based on that alarm value, correct?
Say it
It
again.
would be based on the ad valorem value of the property.
Yes.
So that would be what determines it. But I think what is more important to me, sellable, is that if it passes, it's always gonna be a consistent amount of money coming in every year, not depending on who gives what each year. It's consistent, it's guaranteed to a certain degree every year. It's gonna be that.
And that's what ESCs are for, is financial stability to the volunteer fire departments that they contract with. That the ESD can give them so much money early in every year.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. So all in favor of that motion, that the board endorse the transition to the ESD, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, and Jim Adams, would you work with Barbara and Denny to determine what else we need to do, what we can do to support that one? Okay, thanks. Okay, so we're gonna take about a 5-minute break right now, so. meeting back to order. So, okay, we've got several committee updates here. We're going to start with discuss and take possible action on member charter changes for all committees and formation of any new committees. Let's see, got a note from Corky, chairman of the bylaws committee, to add Craig Lampkin there, replacing Jim Mead. So that's one change I've been aware of. The nominating committee, Pete Mason is stepping down as chair, and Jerry Slater will be taking over as the new chair of that committee. Yes.
Is he going off the committee or is he just stepping down?
Off the committee. Rules enforcement, Julian Jagers has given me notice that he would like someone to take over as chair. Says that the rules enforcement requires at least 5 members and board members may not serve. So we don't have a whole lot of people here that are not on the board, but do we have any suggestions for board members who would be good at that? See, Sam looking at Corky. He's a busy guy.
I don't like it, like for the rest of the year, if you get someone else, I've chaired it for a couple of years before.
Have you? Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Okay.
What's good?
Anybody opposed to Corky? Of course.
I'll get with Julie.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that, Corky. And let's see. Search committees. Jim.
Before you go to that, could I put on that list of changes that Donna Dietrich has stepped down from the long range planning committee?
Okay.
And we have enough members, but if somebody else chooses to join, we'd be happy to have one.
Okay, Donna Dietrich coming off long range planning. Do we have any others other than these of our board member led committees? Okay, so we need a community manager search committee. So I've talked to 7 people so far. 5 have indicated that they would like to be on it. My goal is to have at least as many non-board members as we have board members. So Sam has agreed to chair it. Jim Fox, Kathy Gray, Lori Brendel, Gerald Smith. Like I said, I'm waiting on 2 other people, and I have some more names beyond that. So now Charlie has given us a date, a lot sooner than I had first thought. Maybe we're driving him crazy.
Yes.
I mean, this whole coronavirus thing, I tell you, it's a whole new world. So, anyway, that's the community manager search committee. So we also need a legal counsel search committee. So, so far I've twisted 2 attorneys' arms into to taking that, John Roach and Matt Chauncey. So,
I'll help with it on board.
okay. Jim Adams. Any other board members want to search on the, being on the search committee for a new legal counsel? Okay, anybody know of attorneys we could put on that you might recommend? So, if you think of anybody that might be good at that, just let me know. So we
Talk about the committee or?
on the committee.
Oh, okay.
On the committee, and then we, you know, whether we put it out in writing to solicit bids or whatever, proposals, or we say, well, we know 5 attorneys in the local area to go talk to individually. We'll let the committee figure out how to go about that. Okay. Let's see. And then, so that's all the committee things of the existing ones. I've had a few people inquire about the recycling program that has been announced in the area. I think Kathy probably has done the most research on that as far as I know among board members, but I've had a couple people, you know, saying they're for it. One of them, which offered to be on a committee. I don't know. It seems like, do we have to have 100 people before they would?
It would be about 100.
We need about
But
100.
it's Cook County.
Oh, it's not-
Iowa's population, which I gave them, they said we need at least 100 to sign up.
Okay, 100.
They need more in Gainesville, obviously.
Okay,
the population.
so they wouldn't do us if they didn't
If
get
they can't
Gainesville?
get the surrounding county, it'll be a no-go.
Okay.
And then he gave me the count as of last week, and it's starting to build. So,
Right.
But he's a guy out of Houston, the company's out of Utah.
Okay.
And that's where they started, and now they're in 6 states, Texas being one of the ones they're trying to grow.
Okay. Recyclops.
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 And it's an Uber model for the trucks.
Right.
So that's how they're keeping their costs down. And right now they're looking at Denton as the place they would take all of our recycled in Cook County.
Okay. So I'm just wondering if we can get 100 people if we don't have some type of organized effort.
Yeah, and you have to put your credit card online. It's a subscription model. There's no contract. If you want to stop, you stop. So it's such a simple model. I don't, you know, and I drive to Gainesville a couple times a month with my recycle, so it's well worth the $12 or $19 if you do glass.
Okay. So that's basically just a question I'm asking. Do you think it would make sense to just do an ad hoc committee to try to generate support for that somehow?
I'm happy to try to get people to join. And I gave him Pete's contact so he could advertise in the communique. So I think so too. And there's a reporter in Gainesville that's helping them out, I think with the Tribune and putting ads in there and the free Gainesville paper. So they're starting their advertising and that should be out in September for all the counties.
Okay. So would you be willing to kind of lead that little group? And I'll send you the name.
Of the people that contacted you?
Right.
Okay, sure.
Yep.
And I know a lot of the other women that are recycling. And
Okay.
they'll certainly reach out and help us.
Right. And so definitely
Yeah.
getting something into communication
Yeah.
would be a great start.
Yeah, the communicate's the best place to start. So.
Okay, so,
Along that communicate, I mean, this is a business that's running. Are we giving them ad space? Are we just writing a story?
They're paying for an ad.
Huh?
They're paying for an ad.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, we'll let this
That's
one.
the only way
Well, I mean, we're
communicate
just trying
works.
to, well, not as the POA.
Right.
Yeah, but we're not part of it, right?
So we're doing a committee, so like,
Yeah, you know, I think, you know, it's.
Well, we've had enough people complain that we stopped.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm thinking.
Everybody wants us to get back doing it. but
Right.
We know
So-
it'll be
so
our
here's an
best
opportunity.
if we do it ourselves, so.
Yeah.
It's a pretty simple model. and-
That's exactly right. Jim Fox?
Yeah, a quick question, just, if it's a Cooper model, gate access issues, is that kind of logistically, is that been thought through at all?
If it's an Uber model, what?
Well, I mean, if different people are the ones coming into the community to get all of that, just the gate access issue, go on one of Charlie's lists, I guess, of
Oh,
types of
it'd
contractors.
be another vendor, yeah.
Because it's
so
not my vehicle.
That signage on their truck, just like Uber does.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion that we form an ad hoc committee to be initially led by Kathy to evaluate this recycling opportunity. Do you have a second?
I'll say it.
Okay, second for Jerry. Any other comments, discussions before we vote? All in favor of forming an ad hoc committee to evaluate this opportunity, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. So, thank you for doing that, Kevin. All right, that takes us to the architectural.
Do we need to vote on all those other committees?
Oh, you're right, yep. The other changes that I mentioned as far as the different committee changes, the formation of the community manager search committee and the legal counsel search committee. We have a motion to approve those. Jim, motions, we have a second. A second from Steve. Any other comments on those? All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, all the committee changes are approved. Okay, takes us to Architectural Control Committee. I think that one is off the table though, right?
Right.
Okay, anything else on the ACC? Okay. Is that just tabled or is that completely, that's a done deal now?
It's no longer desired by the owner.
Okay.
Selling the complete property.
Okay, thanks. Let's see. So all of those pages we don't need. Okay, bylaw committee, Corky, Cahoon, you need a microphone?
Hope not, I'll talk that way.
Okay, thank you.
The bylaw committee is listed in the communique as meeting when needed. We last met in March when I briefed you about adding the lake management reserve fund to the bylaws, and you approved that addition. So we finished up March 10th or thereabouts and got it registered with the county. So we haven't met since March. I've not heard anything from this board that were needed this year, although just listening tonight with Mr. DeBoard and Mr. Howell and others about selling golf course property and our paragraph 204, if it's not sufficient, maybe we could work on that. The rezoning vote, for example, if we're going to urge the people to vote, I think we must also let people know that a no vote and a no vote and a no vote is the same thing. If you don't vote, that's the same as a no vote. So do we really need to go out and tell people you haven't voted yet, when we're only counting yes votes, so we're not counting no votes? That might be another one. The one that Mr. Marcus asked at the end of last year is that we clear up that 703Q, remember the petition that wasn't worded by the bylaw committee, but the members approved, that put a cap of $400,000 project, and now we've got the Lake Management Reserve Fund, and I don't think it's fair if we have to vote to approve the loans to the Lake Management Reserve Fund and then vote again to spend it. I think that sentence needs to be cleared up. We could do that. One that I've gone back and forth with Jim Adams on a couple times is on the surveys where we survey residents rather than members. I would like to see that added somewhere in there where the board could, on its annual election, have non-binding referendums or surveys that we could add and allow that on our annual election. Another one Sam mentioned, I think last month, that the contractor building a new house is responsible for his contracts. That might be another area in the bylaws that it isn't mentioned. It's in the procedures, rules and procedures, but it's not in the bylaws. So those are at least 5 things that we could look at if you want us to look at the bylaws. And our committee consists of 2 former board presidents, Gerald Smith and Craig Lampkin, and myself, not a board president, but a former board member. We do have the community manager and the attorney review all of our things before we bring them to the board. So it's not that if we recommend something, you can take it because it requires board approval. So I'm looking for guidance from you if you want us to not have anything on the February ballot, or if you would like us to take some action.
So, I don't know if that requires a motion or not, but
As I understand it, reading the communique is when needed, and I think the board determines if it's needed. And I just told you some areas that we could look at, and those are just my ideas. I haven't discussed it with the rest of the committee. So I don't want to hold a committee meeting and come up with bylaws if you don't think, the board doesn't think that we need to have a bylaw election in the annual election this year.
I make a motion then that we do ask the bylaw committee to look at some of these things that Corky has proposed, and they meet, and that we do plan to have items on the February ballot. So we have a second there. Jim Adams, second. Comments, discussion?
Just a quick comment for Corky. Our intention is to put the survey on the ballot this year, assuming the board, the long range planning committee found that we can do that technically. If the board wants to do that, we can do it, but it wouldn't hurt for you to put that bylaw if you desire to.
Yeah, I would put it under the board's responsibility to do that. And if we did that, then even Lincoln Parks could have some questions in there if they wanted to, or the other committee like this, right? But we've never done that in the past because it wasn't, the survey technically is a non-binding survey. And usually the annual election is an election for yes or no vote, so.
Okay, any other comments before we vote? Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so the motion passes. So instructed. Move forward. Thank you, Corky. Appreciate all the work goes into that.
Thank you. And if any of the board members want to join the committee, they're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, next one says facilities update from Clark. Clark's not here. Charlie or Randy left, Mike, so, okay, give an update on the pavilion.
Yeah, did Randy duck out when there was? We know how he operates. So, the pavilion is looking fantastic. It's all been finished. Really, the remaining couple things are, there's some final landscaping. That's some bushes, shrubs, flowers going to be put in. We didn't want to do it in the absolute heat of the summer. We're going to clean it up for this weekend, and then probably put the final landscaping in once the weather cools down a little bit, because you got to water the heck out of it. There is an issue with some of the floor refinishing, and the company that's doing it has worked over a couple other areas, and they're convinced that the material just needs to dry out to do it. The floor's supposed to be all washed this week, and we'll see how it comes out after that point in time. The additional furniture for the main covered area in the pavilion is here. We're going to put it out along with the old furniture, or I'll call it previous furniture, for the Kiwanis barbecue. The new patio furniture is supposed to be shipped sometime this week. Their factory was closed down for 3 months due to COVID-19 in California, so they fell way behind, but it should be there very shortly. So really, we've paid for virtually everything except the remaining landscaping and the rest of the floor finishing, and then we'll be good to go. A couple major events, Kiwanis Barbecue, which we've had approval from the county judge on, and so I imagine they'll have a pretty good turnout in the pavilion, and then also the anglers will have a function here too. So that's all I know on the pavilion.
Thank you.
What about, I got a question. The furniture, the patio furniture is going to be out there all the time, right?
Yes.
Can be used by anybody?
Yes.
Okay, but there won't be furniture underneath.
Well, that's a good question. okay? And we haven't really determined exactly, as an example, if you had a dining event set up for 300 people on a Monday, and you've got a dining event on a Wednesday for 300 people, does it make sense to pull all that furniture out, roll it in for a day, and then roll it back out the next day?
I understand that, but I mean, all the time.
No, the process, the thought process is we've got the rolling carts, it'll be put on the rolling carts. Hopefully the storage space, will learn how to calculate, how to roll everything in there. I mean, if you observe this room in here, is if they have chapel on a Sunday, and then they've got another event on a Monday, and that's not a good example, because we usually have line dancing. They try to, if it's gonna be used in a similar fashion in a short period of time, they just keep it set up, okay? And I think
just wanted to make sure that you weren't leaving for it after all.
that's, the intention is to put it on carts and roll it in there. We will have to see how that affects our labor force, and if we have to, put some extra hours on it, we'll figure that out. So.
Other questions about the pavilion? All right, next one is golf committee update from Randy. Couple of things under there.
All right, the first one is, we have a new tree donation. Rick and Connie are donating a tree in memory of John Beck. And you all know John, Lifty, great guy. And
That's along with Matt Chency and his wife, Barb. And then we also thought everybody knew John. I don't know if there's something else the golf course needs, or we could get a bigger tree, but somehow we'd like to kind of open it up. Because when I played golf with John, it always took an extra hour for the number of people he had to hug.
oh, that's good. The story to tell.
Yep.
So anyway, I'd like to approve whatever Rick will give us. Then it goes to Jim Fox has a great tree plan already going for different places where we're needing. It's getting about that time in October that we'll start planting trees. I think we're gonna start planting them, and just trust him and Brian to put them in places they need to be, because we're losing some trees, we noticed, with the disease out on the golf course now. So, and make a motion that we accept the donation.
Steve, is that a question?
No, second.
Second, oh, you're second. Thank you. Third. All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Thank you, Randy.
All right, next one is, golf committee. We had a couple of things come up. One thing we need to clarify is, we're going through last time with our 4-part rule, is that, we had an incident where somebody didn't want to double up, and we discussed back and forth with, Brown or the pro shop, whoever given exceptions, and after a debate, Brown and Lauren and Jim and everybody in there said, hey, I am not a medical expert. Please don't put me in that position. I don't want to give exceptions, and I think that the golf committee was, hey, we have already compromised by allowing 4 golf carts versus the 3 we've had for decades to try to compromise for COVID. And I think that's a fair assessment, and that everybody knows that. Everybody watching this knows that there are no exceptions. If you're making a personal choice, the choice is not to ride in a golf cart with somebody, it's to play a foursome versus a five. Just so
They always have that option.
Have that option. Everything's cleared up, and we don't have anybody, feeling like they heard something that wasn't there. And then another thing that came up is, with all the heat and stuff, Brown has asked, can we get y'all's feelings on putting the water faucets back out there? He said people are not taking enough water, and he fears somebody dropping down with the heat versus just more of a deal than right now with our precautions with COVID. He'd asked, could we please, nobody had any objections. He was on top of Charlie and said, can we get those back up? And I feel for him, because I played over the weekend and didn't take enough water with me. When I got to 16, didn't know if I could make it around. I did, and it was very uncomfortable, and I was worried. So that was something that to throw out here. And then another thing is, the golf courses are going back to allowing the rakes to be out of the traps in the holes are correct. I played 3 different ones the last 2 weeks, and every one of them's back to normal rules, pre-COVID. And Brian wanted to know when we want to start doing that. And I suggest make a motion that we say, hey, let's just go back and do things like we did before, and still using our precautions of use your social distance and stuff. But as far as the rakes, it's hot out there, it's not going on, and the hole that's better, we're back to normal. So,
What about the flag?
well, I think we've trained ourselves now that people aren't pulling them out. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, I haven't seen,
Yeah,
even
I like
when we
it.
played in the other places, nobody pulled the flag sticks.
Well, the point of putting it in upside down didn't have anything to do with pulling the flag, it had to do with reaching down there. But I agree that we should flip it back. It's insignificant
Yeah,
change,
just
if you're
like-
reaching in there anyhow. And quite honestly, I got robbed of a hole in one.
Oh, yeah, guarantee that's the truth. Yeah.
It was that far away, so it hit the bottom of the stick.
So if nobody has any objections, I'll pass that along to the guys and say, everything, we're fine with it here. Well, yeah, we can vote on it. I mean, but it was the governor's rules we went.
If we, well, I don't know, yeah, we should follow whatever the governor.
No. So,
But I think we don't want to go against anything the governor.
no, well, if it is, the other golf courses are going against them too. So that's the reason I think they're, yeah.
So, do I hear we need to make a motion?
So I make a motion, we let the water faucets come back. We put the rakes back out, we put the ducks.
Is that a second from Steve?
I have a question.
Okay, so comments, questions? Kathy?
If we turn those water faucets on, are we gonna turn the rest of them on? And I know it's hot, I mean, that's a hill, off unto itself, if you really heat.
Is there one on that here?
Yeah, these have been untouched, but I think they've had virtually little to no usage, because you have other options in here.
Right.
Other ones, like, are there some at the tennis courts?
East Beach has them, West Beach. Yeah, we have them
They would be here.
there. Okay, they're the ones inside.
Any others?
The East Beach, the relocations on the golf course, Little Fox, 4, 13, 16. I think that'd be it.
Okay.
I don't know that that's changed in the public. I know there's people that are probably doing it, but I think most water fountains are staying shut down. Right. We're happy to do whatever you want.
Jim?
Use at your own risk sign out there.
You what?
Put use at your own risk sign out there.
I think that's light nowadays.
Yeah, then
Really? Jim Adams?
I don't know what the procedure would be, but I'd like to make a small amendment to what the motion is.
Okay,
It's a friend.
okay, and Kathy, do you want to, do we want to first amend the question, for Kathy about the one remaining water fountain? So, okay, so I guess Kathy's making a proposed amendment, amendment to include any other outside water fountains. Okay, all in favor, I guess we need a second to Kathy's amendment. Is that what you're?
No, that's not mine, that's a different, I'll second it, but I have another.
Okay, all in favor of Kathy's amendment to add all the remaining, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay.
Jim,
Okay, and Jim's got an amendment.
I would just like this, the amendment to say that the POA staff validate that that's all right according to governor restrictions, that we can have water fountains turned on and or the golf flag, to the extent they can find that rule.
I'm in that every day. So.
As long as we need to follow the governor's guidelines.
Okay, instead of POA staff, can we say our COVID-19 committee?
That's fair.
Okay, so,
I'll find out tomorrow.
okay, we have a second to Jim's amendment to make the COVID-19 committee approve that, okay?
who seconded that?
Sammy. Okay, all in favor of that amendment, say aye. Okay. All right, so with those two amendments, Any other discussion or comments? All in favor, say aye. All opposed? Okay, so motion passes. Those two minutes. Thank
Before
you.
we leave off, can I ask you about that question?
Sure.
Frank, maybe Randy or Jim, you mentioned trees, you mentioned, I'm not sure where this goes with Charlie, but there's a number of trees on the golf course that are tagged for, I heard the other day, red means going down, and green means trim. So has the committee reviewed all those trees, or is that just Brian's decision, or is it Bobby's decision? There's some trees that are very much alive that are not yet going down.
Yes, an arbitrist to come and make those decisions. Ron does.
Okay, on the court, maybe get a second opinion on that, because I've had arborists tell me to tear down a tree before, and that tree became the biggest tree in the neighborhood. So, I'm definitely not an environmentalist, tree hugger kind of guy, but who's concerned with the call to let markers and trees up with us.
We've lost so many from where the oaks are catching, and the heat's killing a couple in our yard. So, I just take it, see any more oaks coming down if they have to.
Well, the interesting one on 18 today, that I went by when Matt was taking it down, and the whole center was hollow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think the arbitrist is
Yeah.
being
That's a dead
overly.
tree.
What?
That was a dead tree.
It was alive 3 months ago.
But I'm saying there was a tree took down right next to it that was alive, and it was right next to the tee box, and then there was a dead one right next to it also. And there was one very much, and there's one marked in the corner, it's very much alive, top was taken out at one time by a storm, but it's very much alive.
Well, I guess you could make a motion to do that.
Well, it's not on the agenda, so.
Oh, yeah, I guess we could.
Yeah, I think
That's
you raised
true.
something that we can look into.
Yeah.
Rick, one comment too is, try to like confirm this, was Brian mentioned in the meeting the other day that he was being asked about looking at long-term or improvements to get this kind of comprehensive look at the golf course and what we can do. And one of the things, my concern too, would be if we're losing a lot of these trees, you're not necessarily going to have to go back in the same spot. Some definitely don't go back in the same spot, is that we do look at the loss of trees and if there's a need to replace those at the game community and make a recommendation along with other improvements on that. So that's my concern, is we are losing a lot of trees and not putting back.
Okay. Thanks. All right. Land Use Committee, Jim Adams, discuss and take possible action on committee recommendations. And I know we have something on the executive session as well related to that, right?
Yes. So we'll take it, in your packet, there's a section, there's a page that talks about, has two sections on it, says keep following lots, no action for POA. And so, that's lot 1878 and, 107 Howard Drive West, it's right up front, on the property we were talking about earlier. It has a POA sign on it, there's some fencing there, so that's that property. Lot 356 and 357, which is 516 and 514 Howard Drive West. There are two lots right next to the driving range. And so these three lots, the land committee is recommending that the POA keep these lots, and because how it's being used up front, and because when we work any plans with the acreage that we have, we can include those two lots in that plan. Whatever that might be. So that would be one motion I would like to make, and I guess I can go ahead. If you want me to go ahead and make that motion now, and then to the second one, or you want me to do them all at once?
Can we do them all at once? Is that going to be a problem?
No, that's fine.
I like all
We'll do it, Jim. Okay, and then there's, in the next section, there's 3 lots. They're lot 239, 125 Pueblo Drive East, lot 1250, 132 Cayuga Trail North, and 1277, lot 1277, which is 1302 Kiowa Drive West. These lots, committee would recommend that the POA staff obtain comparables and list these properties for sale or find some way to sell them, whatever the most efficient way is to sell them. And put them on the market as soon as possible, and let the staff get comparables and set a price, unless you guys want to take a different method of doing that. That would be our recommendation. Now, one of those lots, I think it would be 1277, which is up in the very north of the Horseshoe, is a lot that could have some water issues because of the way things flow around there, and we just need to be, we should be very clear, and anytime we're selling it, be full disclosure kind of thing, which I'm sure we would, that there might be, they may have to do some corrections to the property to property. So,
Questions?
On lot 239, Charlie, is it south of the east gate?
Yes.
And which way, I know, Sam, part of our planning, when we were just really getting started, have we confirmed how we're going to do that east gate configuration?
I'll look at that, that's actually, that lot is south of the houses. It's not right there by the.
Okay, it's not the one by the
no,
east gate.
it is just south of the gate. There is some POA property between the street and the house, or with the lot, but that lot is that corner, it's directly south.
So if you're looking at the east gate to the exit side, it's on the right-hand side.
And that's the
Next
side
house.
we need the extra space for the semis.
Yeah, we're going to enlarge the east gate.
But
Not on the exit, are we?
Not on the, yeah, on the exit side.
On the
Oh, I
exit.
thought it was on the other side.
no, it's on the other side, but we'll go back and relook at that.
Okay, so you may want to hold on that.
Yeah, we-
Yeah, I wasn't sure, Jim, because we've looked at plans and we're just not far enough down the path to make a yes or no decision on that.
So the other bit is the house with the tax lien. Leslie Sweet is trying to work on getting a response from the IRS, and they are effectively shut down dealing with stuff like this right now. I'll get him fired up on it again and see if we can get it. That out of all of these is the most saleable, not a lot, the most buildable, the easiest in the whole bit. In terms of the comparables, we can look at what's listed and what's selling. Another thing to consider, and you may love this, you may hate it, is you could do a sealed bid auction with a reserve on it, and then you actually have people bid upon those, okay? And you allow them time to go out and look at it and hold bid. So now that's one, we sold a jet ski that way, we sold some other stuff here. It's also fairly fair, you know what I'm saying? It's not who shows up first, but just an idea. We can talk about that further offline. So,
Well, I think we need to make that part of the motion, how we're going to do it. And we still need comparables either way to know what the sellers are at properly. So if we were going to sell it by sealed bid versus putting it on the market, I think that we would need, I think the board would need to approve that one. Or you can, Charlie, make that decision.
or we go, or come back to the land use committee.
Yeah, we could,
I think, there's lots listed from 30 something to 40 and 50. So, but yeah, we can find out what's sold.
Great.
Know that lot 1277, I think they would, if being sold, like, the the POA has no obligation to buy drainage.
Well, and effectively, this would, to be properly developed and built on, you'd have to retain services of a civil engineer. You'd have a civil engineer make engineering recommendations to be done properly. And it's not as expensive typically as you would think. I mean, it's not in the tens of thousands of dollars. It's, you know, a couple of $1,000. So but they'll have to look at the FEMA map and finish floor elevations and all that stuff. And that will affect purchase price.
So are you suggesting somehow we write that as a requirement into Jim's motion?
Well, I think Jim brought it up too.
Yeah, he mentioned this, I heard that we communicate to them that drainage is their issue, not the.
Yeah. Yeah, and a way to word it, this lot could be buildable, but could be more costly or whatever to build on, because it might not be that, it might be insignificant, you know, compared to what a lot of other people are doing right now. So we do have some people that are doing some, you know, drainage work as it is. But yeah, I think that's something that we need to, I mean, we could have to sign a disclaimer or waiver or whatever. And the other part of when we listed, you know, that would be part of the listing agreement, I guess. So.
Got all that, Jim? You have a motion now.
I might be back to two separate motions. Three. Yeah, it probably would be easier just to say that I make a motion for lots 1878, 356, that the POA retain those lots and for future evaluation of other future use, POA uses.
And that includes the one by the East Gate?
No, let's
No,
talk
it's
to.
not that. Oh, I should, because of what Sam said, yes, I should make that 239 part of that. We need to take and security to review that. We'll take it up later after that.
So
As far as the other one,
1878, 356, 357?
No, 356, 357, and now 239. That's the motion. Straightforward.
okay, do we have a second? Or is that a question or a second?
Second.
Second, okay, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of Jim's motion, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes.
All right, I'd like to make a motion on lots 1250 and 1277 that we give the POA authority to obtain comparables and set up selling price based on those comparables and put them on the open market. And I entertain the motion to sell it in different ways.
Okay, all right, do we have a second to Jim's motion? Okay, Jerry seconds. Any further discussion?
And I should add that that language on the one, that we make sure there's language around that one about the cost of your drainage.
Okay. All in favor of Jim's motion there, say aye. Anybody opposed? That motion passes.
And I'd like to go ahead and say that we will, we will be talking about lots 204, 1124, and 261 in our executive session. The board has the right to talk about what we think the right conditions are that we should sell those under.
Okay.
And so that's what we talk about.
All right. All good?
All good.
Okay, Lodge and Tavern update, Steve Wunderlich. Couple of items under there, some of which we've already talked to. Steve, you got a microphone?
Yes, I do. As far as seating capacity, Sam and Kathy came up with this. They put a lot of work into it, and I appreciate it. The committee appreciates it. It looks looks to me that the assembly room is a maximum of 50 during COVID. And Southwest is 14 mainly because we set that up for me. So it's not really usable for much more. The boardroom is 4 people max. And not many people are using it because it's such a small amount. 19th hole is 30, the dining room is 32, the patio is 40, and the pavilion is really whatever we want. He's got 100 down here, that's fine. I mean, I think that's probably all we can do with the tables and the 2 couples and all that, so I think that's all we can do. I appreciate the effort you guys put into that. As far as the scheduling of the facilities and the cost of rent, we're not ready to present that to the board. We've got, at least 2 more meetings before we can come up with that. We'll have it for the next meeting. But it's gonna change quite a bit, and I think it'll be for the better for all of us. And Kiwanis Barbecue, I reviewed that, it looks really good. Okay, ACC fish fry, I had a concern with what they wanted to do with the silent auction, and wanted to put it in the hallway, and I nixed that, and we're gonna put it in here against that wall, and there are no other things going on, it's only gonna be here Monday through Friday, they'll have it there, and it'll be gone for check, so it shouldn't interfere with anything. And other than that, the other ones are also looking like they're gonna be approved. So, looks good. That's what we got to be going on, but in the next board meeting, we'll have a vote needed on what we come up with.
Thanks, Steve.
You bet.
Appreciate it.
Just kind of make one point. He mentioned the maximum seating, but in reality, for both, in any room we're in, basically, there's a range of seating depending upon the mix of common household people versus non-common household people. So that's why you see a 40 to 100 in the pavilion and 20 to 50 in the strip. So just make that clear.
Because like the women's club, KWC, there's not very many relatives there. So we're going to have to space them a little differently to lunch. Than what we've been doing. So that's why we wanted that one.
Makes sense. Okay. Parks and Recreation, Jim Fox, discuss and take possible action on tree donations.
Okay, so at the last meeting, we talked about a tree donation from the Iowa Book Club. Julie Henry was the one representing them in memory of Bill Branham. We couldn't take action to accept the donation because it wasn't worded properly on the agenda. So I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and accept that tree donation. It would be in the vicinity of the pavilion. The way it was worded from a recommendation standpoint is just located per a landscape plan. So developed for the site.
Okay, we have a second.
A second.
Second from Sam. Any further discussion? Steve, question?
You know, all these donations, we need to pass on so we can get them on the tree,
That's right.
you know,
Yep.
so make sure you're letting Lori know, so she can get that happen, because I hate for them to slide, we wanna build that thing up.
Actually, it's Leanne.
Okay. Leanne, let Leanne know. Anyway.
Good point. Okay, anything else? All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, approved. Safety and Security Committee, Sam Samuels, got a couple of items on there.
Yeah, first off, the guardhouse design update. On August the 7th, Charlie and myself and the chief met with Kyle Booth who's with, Bluestone. And we kind of laid out our ideas as to kind of what we're going to do as far as what's needed at the guardhouse. The main emphasis to be safety and security for the security personnel. And, excuse me, also the, design as far as, trying to use everything that's there and keep your costs low. And, so they're working on that and we're expecting to get something back from, Bluestone. You have anything to add on that, Charlie, as far as guardhouse?
Well, we talked about trying to use the same footprint we currently have. We have shifted toll tags and boat registration over to the POA office. So that happens Monday through Friday from 8 to 4:30. We already have a lobby at the POA office. Initially, with the new guardhouse, we talked about putting a lobby over there, and we said, don't put a lobby over there. We also talked about contactless interfaces between the members and the guards, and that's important. And we also talked about trying to plan for technology in the future. We have no idea what it will look like, okay? Also, their architect came along, a gentleman named Drake, I forgot his last name. Hasn't been with them very long, but he actually came from, he had experience with these automated car washes, which was interesting because it had gate experience and ground loop experience and pay experience and all that other stuff. So I thought that was great. We also did talk about taking something as simple as fast food technology, Chick-fil-A, okay, and how they communicate with the people in the car, okay, and that those headsets and those speakers and microphones are already out there. So instead of talking to somebody through an open window, we want to just use technology that way. Also, one other thing, idea that we're have thrown out there is going with a modular storm shelter that may come in on the back of a good-sized trailer, and when the roof is taken off, we drop in that modular storm shelter in the chief's old office, and that could be a secure for a tornado type of approach. That's the approach, and they also had experience with all types of storm shelters, underground, block walls, and modular. So initially, it's I think a good first.
One of the emphasis we put is the fact that we still need to be able to possibly operate, you know, an inbound lane, maybe, temporary building of some type. The east side, the east gate, that's where we're talking about the enlarging the east gate to where better access, so that if we do have to shut down the main gate, we have access coming up to the east gate. So we're looking at all of these different things and trying to put it all together. And we kind of, they took the information that we gave them and it turned out to be working on it from a design standpoint. So that's the guardhouse. We also have a question here about personal floating devices. We've had different comments come back from different people, some in particular, that personal floating devices are causing possibly some problems with the fishermen and other people in the boats. And also the buoys. We had different questions about private buoys that are put out by individuals in the lake. I asked Chris today about it. I didn't know this particular thing, but we have no way. This is association buoys. 17 danger dock buoy 69, ski in, ski out 4, swimming areas 4, orange balls, which are around the swimming areas 24. And I asked him if he had an idea of how many private ones that we have, and he says 8 to 10 between dock areas. So these are some of the things that are being discussed, and the Safety and Security Committee will have it on the agenda for this month to discuss these things and come back to the board with any kind of recommendations we might have. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Tim. So community manager reports. Charlie?
All right, page 34. You heard earlier my treasurer's report of surplus after the first month. And Rick Walker corrected me, we want to keep the revenue going. Okay, so that would be great, but I do think we'll be spending some of the expense money there. As you know, when you come across the golf cart, or if you're going from 3 to 4 or 9 to 10, there was that extensive spring area on the POA property that's caused us problems for years and years and years. So we actually went in there, took away a bunch of dirt, moved a bunch of dirt around, and it sculpted it and sodded it. It's pretty ugly looking right now, but once the grass starts growing, hopefully it'll be better. On the other side of the road is they actually put in a French drain surrounded by gravel and landscape material, and there's also a small swale. So we're hoping that French drain collects and takes all that spring water and takes it, across the way on the lake. We've still got some cleaning up to do and some prettying up to do with it. But hopefully that's gonna help that area, because that's kind of the worst spring area we've got around. Communicate, ad sales, we talked about that. When I wrote this, we lost a couple long-term, but they've already come back, I think. So it's, Glenn Polk is back and the whole bit. The golf course bridges, they were able to do one of the sections today. Golf maintenance needed to get their equipment out there to aerify the greens, and so they'll do the other one tomorrow. It looks to be nearly ideal conditions for curing of the product. Okay, so hopefully everything will be good with that. Lodge sales are ahead of budget so far this month. I talked about cost of goods trend is favorable. We talked about this 50% properly spaced and all that good stuff. I do have a handout. There were some questions that Jim raised in terms of POA activities. And actually, this came out of the group formerly known as the Friends of Lake Ocean, which I think is now known as Friends of Lake Iowa. So what I did is I looked back on the information from years past. Oops, you've got a blank one. So here is really the activities. Now, remember, most of this stuff is on hold right now anyway. In fact, the vast majority of it is modified. Big activities that we've typically done in the past, this past is July 4th. A lot of that's driven by the celebration committee and the community manager. We had a modified July 4th this year. Veterans Day is upcoming. Quite frankly, under the current circumstances, the feedback I've got from the American Legion is not necessarily positive about being able to do anything for Veterans Day. Have you heard anything different?
We talked about the last meeting and consideration being given for the pavilion, possibly. So nothing definite. Jeremy said he was going to get with you.
Okay, so that's a new twist. It is on November 11th. So you probably got a 50-50 chance of the weather being good, but that's a possibility.
Is that the one where we put on a breakfast for veterans?
No, it's a dinner. It's a dinner and a program. Okay. Yeah. And then, under current guidelines, you could have a couple sitting next to each other, then the other people are supposed to be 6 feet apart. So you could get 2 couples on one of those large round tables. That's how the seating would be. And they were supposed to come in with their mask on, take it off reading, and put their mask back on. So that's a new twist to it. That's
I was just suggesting.
Yeah. New Year's Eve is moderately challenging, because once again, on the large round 6 table, you could have a couple on one side and a couple on the other side. And if you're dancing, you would stay 6 feet away from the other side. So, but we do have the entertainment tentatively secured. We haven't paid Clint yet. No, we haven't.
It's not in contract.
Well, yeah, and he understands the circumstances and the whole bit. Okay. Smaller activities, every year we've done the Easter, excuse me, not every year. This year we did meet the Easter egg hunt, okay? We're set up to do that. The Christmas tree lighting is something that's done in the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and then the breakfast with Santa, and that's done typically within the lodge. Dances, dinners, concerts, there's Valentine's Day, which the previous group Friends of the Lodge has been involved with. Thanksgiving is something that the lodge does. And then I put down Easter brunch, but we didn't do that this year. That's something we have done in years past. Groups still do decorations for their lodge events. The KWC does their fashion show and monthly meetings. The WGA does all girls' night out decorations. And then groups that do everything, the Kiwanis does, they take care of their barbecue. English Coast takes care of their fish fry. The Kiowa Women's Club, you called it Autumn Accents. They're basically doing that, shooting nuts, themselves.
So we'll do a home tour, we'll do that.
The patios,
Yeah,
whatever.
outside.
Yep. So this is kind of it. Some of the things that the folk will continue to do is summer concerts, golf cart caroling, t-shirt sales, and blood drive. Okay, so some of the things that they said they'll no longer do is New Year's Eve, that the lodge will do that, Valentine's, paper and electronic shredding, you've already got that lined up, okay, for the fall cleanup. We've got contracting with a third party to do that. Exactly how that will work in terms of cleaning off.
Yeah, they canceled.
Did the spring, because they were gonna have a lot of volunteers.
Yeah.
I think what it may have to do is, remember, if Sam or Jim brings paper to be shredded, you may have to carry that yourself and put it in the shredding bin. Okay, so we've gotta work through all the logistics of that. They can't have volunteers, we don't wanna have Jim and his shredded stuff to Sam take it. So the fall festival actually is going to be somewhat replaced by the autumn accents.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, but they've done a good job of social distancing. And
They got a good plan.
Breakfast with Santa, I talked about that. So that's kind of how this all, shakes out with these different events. One of the thing is, we basically, for a lot of those duties, have put the lodge general manager in charge of taking care of whatever needs to be done, but we really haven't done anything. We had graduation ceremony, and we had July 4th, and that's kind of it. The rest of the stuff's on hold for the time being.
Well, my point, I had a couple of raised the question. I really wanted to, my question really centered around New Year's Eve and Valentine's Day events. And my concern, I think other people's concern, that go to this, is the lodge, and you're saying that's the lodge manager putting that on. I think it could be not go over as well. And I think we need some kind of ad hoc committee, activity committee, or some new committee for each of those events to drive what we want the price range to be, what kind of budget we want for entertainment, what kind of budget we want for meals, and help on decorations, those kinds of things. Not the FOL, which they say they don't want to do, that's fine, but I think the committee are those two not as well. Or we could have a lodge manager come up by the flagpole out there.
Well, and I think you bring up an interesting point. What is the price point for New Year's Eve? Yeah, is it $100, $75, okay? Certain groups want it to be $75 to $100. So I think that's it. Valentine's Day would probably be less problematic than New Year's Eve, because it's usually $20 or $25. Well,
It was a pretty nice meal last year.
for Valentine's Day?
Yeah, it was a really nice meal in the van.
$75.
And we had a band.
It wasn't 75 for Valentine's Day.
It
It's not enough, I mean, you know, yeah, my expertise, I could, but I'm only gonna do that for a very short time. And whoever takes it over is gonna have pretty big spots for it. So I would say no.
And I would agree, whatever the budget for that is, we should buy by the ticket, sell ticket, that budget. And I asked that, and I asked the question, is POA funds Fourth of July, are they funding anything else in these activities?
For one thing, yes, we fund, Veterans Day. We paid for the Veterans Centers the last 2 years. In the last couple years, there was an ask for the lodge management to pay for part of the band members. That has happened in years past. The POA pays for the Easter egg hunt. We pay for the Christmas tree lighting. Breakfast with Santa is mostly, vast majority of that's recouped in the price of the meal. Okay. Valentine's Day, typically it's been recouped in the price of the meal with the exception of $500. Thanksgiving's, recouped in the price of the meal as with Easter lunch. So the rest of the deal, the fashion show and the girls' night out, all of that should be, done with ticket price and the lodge charges. The other thing that I didn't put on this list was, the whole poker deal that you brought up. I forgot about that one. Quite frankly, I think what happened with the FOL, which is different in the KWC, the English Club, Kiwanis, NWGA, and NGA, is they didn't have people that wanted to volunteer to help decorate and put on a lot of. The rest of those groups, have taken the ball up. So I think that's where the rub,
Well, my take on it was that they had a lot of great ideas.
Right.
And it just kept expanding and expanding and expanding, and we just ran out of people that could work those without the same 10% doing it over and over.
Well, I think it's safe to say there's various takes on that, but that doesn't matter at this point. But what I do think matters is New Year's Eve, and or any of these events. You did mention that the POA is funding something or some portion of entertainment for New Year's Eve.
it has been passed.
And is that in the budget for this year?
There is money in the budget. The question is, do you want that?
So are you proposing the committee to allocate funds from the field, already approved for the budget, and then also
I'm just suggesting that we advertise for somebody volunteers to be committees to direct the POA.
We have to establish the committee first.
In the past, I guess we established that for a while.
I don't think we did establish that.
I think
We don't establish.
I guess that's what I'm saying. The committee got together and said, we want to have a party. They can plan a party. We'll do it. Now for you to POA funding, I feel different, but if somebody wants to put on Valentine's Day event, they can do it. Sure. They don't have to have they just have to reserve it. Doesn't make a deal for a meal, but I'm suggesting these that we should put out communications saying we, as a POA, we'd like to have a committee help lead us.
Okay. Is that a motion?
Well, it's not written.
Nothing on the agenda.
No, not on the agenda.
So that'll be,
Yeah.
the idea,
Right.
and we'll have to put that on the agenda for the next one, think about what community that is, or, celebration is a lodge at Tavern, however it goes about.
Right. Okay. Other comments for Jim related to that?
Maybe I'll speak up because it can't hear online.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, it got really quiet.
Okay. Okay. So I guess you.
I just had
the question, I didn't want to make that.
He's now answered. I haven't yet, but I'm making a suggestion.
Okay.
We'll look at it.
Okay, anything else for Charlie?
Yeah, I'm sorry, roads soliciting bids for work in the fall. We have a year and a half worth of road work in our budgets. Okay, I think this fall, the road work will be smaller. I think there's a couple areas that we'll need to redo the pavement on, but I don't see us doing extensive milling this fall. I think that we'll do more sealing and striping. You typically want to seal the asphalt after it's been down 1 to 2 years. We've got to remember a good amount of asphalt in that. I think the milling will occur, the bigger patches will occur next year. I'm getting with Chris to fine tune his plan on that. We did have some misunderstanding, I don't know if anybody's heard it, with the service dog at the beach. There was actually a service dog, there was a dog on the beach with a young man, and he didn't have a service vest on. So the security guard went up to the young man, and the young man got kind of intimidated, felt he was being, treated unfairly. I did a complete investigation, talked to the officer, talked to the chief. I don't think it was true. I do think that it was just some misunderstanding. I talked about moving the auto toll tax and boat registration fee with that. I've already done that.
I guess, question on that.
Yep.
Are you going to, like these forms, online forms, tell people to go to the field? Is that it?
Yep, we need to modify those online forms.
Yeah, I was looking at that, so.
You, any other questions for Charlie? Okay, so we've already done our comments from the members on additional business. Jim Buck?
I probably should have covered this underneath Parks and Recreation update. I just want to let you all know, Christian Morrison has a drone, and he went out and flew all of the park sites that the community had identified. So we have the video, and we have pictures, photos of links of most of a lot of the open space areas, including the lodge, Sam the guardhouse, the aerials there. So I mean, I have those right now. I haven't had, we got 2 last week, so I haven't had much chance to do that. But we do have some really aerial pictures, 52 acres. We have some out there, and he's going to do a little bit more too. So just shout out to Christian, thanks for doing that project for us.
Okay, thank you.
One of the things Jim just hit me too, talking about tree removal. We have the gag communities in place to put the trees out there, so I think Brian just go to the tree removal, and that way we've got another layer of checking through, let us get it clean, and get that taken care of.
Okay. Anything else? All right, so we have an executive session. So do we have a motion to go out of regular session into executive session? Okay, Randy, second by Gary. Okay, all in favor of going out of regular session into executive session? Say aye.